Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Avon Advisory Plan Commission meeting. If you are interested in having a copy of the agenda, they are available on the tables to the right of the audience. We will be conducting business as outlined on the agenda. From time to time, the board may deviate from the agenda. As president of this body, I will inform those in attendance of any deviations. This meeting is being recorded for the public record. Because of this, we request that personal conversations are kept to a minimum and that all cell phones are set to vibrate or turned off. Any phone calls should be taken outside of the chambers. If you are interested in commenting during the public hearing portion of the Commission's deliberations, please sign up on the sheets located on the tables to the right of the audience. When your name is called, please step forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Please address your comments to the board and not to the staff or to the petitioner. Your comments should relate directly to the case at hand. During the conduct of the public hearing portion of the Commission's deliberations, the petitioner will have 10 minutes to present their case to the Commission. Remonstrators will have 10 minutes to present objections to the petition. Persons in support of the petition, other than the petitioner, will have an additional 10 minutes to present support for the petition. Finally, the petitioner will close the public hearing portion of the presentation with a 5-minute rebuttal period. Once the public hearing is closed, no additional testimony will be heard unless it is solicited by members of the Commission during the question and answer phase of the Commission's deliberations. Subdivision plat and development plan petitions are ministerial requests, meaning that if the proposal meets the requirements set forth in the town's development ordinances, the Plan Commission must approve the request. In the interest of transparency, state law requires that the Plan Commission hold a public hearing even if the development proposal must be approved. Responses to public comments and questions may be given once the public hearing portion is closed. We understand there may be several persons here tonight who wish to speak. In order to keep the meeting running in a timely fashion, we would request that you not repeat previous comments. We have quite a few items on the agenda this evening, so that will become very important. And thank you for your assistance in facilitating a respectful, fair, and timely meeting. Again, welcome to our meeting, and please stand for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's do a roll call, please.
Mansberg.
Here.
Hugenberg.
Here.
Reed. Here. Spencer. Spencer's absent. Susan.
Here.
Kaufman. Here.
And we have a quorum. Next item is approval of the meeting minutes from last month, July 22nd's meeting. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes and peruse them for any edits, corrections, observations?
I move we approve the minutes of June 22nd meeting.
Do we have a
July 22nd, sorry.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion being offered and seconded. We'll take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The meeting minutes are approved. This would be the time at which anybody who wants to speak about items that are not on tonight's agenda can come forward and speak. If the item you wish to speak to is already on tonight's agenda, we would ask you to wait until that agenda item is brought up. But if you'd like to speak about something that's not on tonight's agenda, then please step forward now. Nobody? Okay, this portion of the public comment section is closed. Have there been any requests for continuances or modifications?
Thank you, Chairperson Rensburg, members of the commission. The first request is for a continuance of ZA 24-05, which is the Silver Springs rezone. As you know, this has been continued several times. We are waiting on a traffic study, and we were hopeful that it was going to be in by today or before today's hearing, but some of the information that the engineer doing the study needed from our offices was not received in time for the study to be completed. So staff is requesting a continuance of this matter to your September 23rd hearing, and that would be without additional notice.
And you said this is a staff request, not a petitioner
Correct.
request? Okay, very good. Any discussion about this request for staff continuance?
My only question on the traffic study, we know there's a couple other developments going on in this same area. Will that be taken into consideration from this traffic study?
Yes, this one, the commercial to the south, and as well as the Brownsburg information are all being looped into the studies.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? And if not, we'll take a motion.
I make a motion that we continue ZA 2405 Silver Springs rezone to the September 23rd meeting, I believe.
Having a motion presented and seconded, would now take a vote.
Ransburg,
For,
Guggenberger,
Or,
Reed, Zuzen,
4.
Kaufman.
motion carries, and agenda item is continued to September 23rd. Moving on to the next item, which is the Washington Township Fire Department.
Thank you, President Ransburg, members of the commission. Staff is requesting that this matter be continued to your September 23rd hearing to allow for a new revised notice to be mailed out. This is a development plan review that has 3 waivers included with it. The notice that was mailed out by the petitioner referenced the development plan review, but it did not make any mention of the waivers as is required by your rules of procedure. So in order for the petitioner to send out a revised notice to interested parties that includes a description of the waivers being requested, this should be continued to your September 23rd hearing.
Have there been any previous continuances of this item?
There have not.
Okay. Discussion on the request for continuance, and this is a staff request, correct?
Yes.
so one of the things that I'd ask you to talk to the petitioner about is like on waiver B, instead of eliminating, can they accommodate the plantings in the site as opposed to complete elimination? Something we ask all the petitioners to come through. They don't want to plant on one side. It's like, okay, how can you accommodate the plantings and through the site? The other thing too is reducing the buffer yard. That's a significant reduction. So I would let you know that I'd like to hear some extensive details on that to understand why we would provide that waiver. That's a pretty extensive reduction.
Your comments are noted, and we will certainly pass those along.
Further questions or discussion?
I have one on waiver C, that full access onto Avon Avenue. You've got a road cut there already, Governor's Row. This is going to be right next to it, isn't it? I mean, there's not going to be a whole lot of separation there.
So right now, we're just discussing the motion. These items can be discussed when the hearing is heard, I think. Do we have any further discussions on the motion to continue?
Well, I mean, part of this is like if the petitioner, letting them know some of the concerns, and I have a concern about waiver C too, because they're asking for a road cut that is closer than what our ordinances call for. So what I'd ask staff is let the petitioner know is like, again, you're asking for a road cut here that we ordinarily wouldn't allow because we want to have a separation between road cuts, especially on Avon Avenue.
I don't disagree with that, but that would be a discussion not right this moment. That would be a
No,
discussion.
but since we're continuing this, things for them to be aware of, so when they come back, that we want to talk about, because I'm wanting more details about their waivers. So I want them to be aware of these so they can prepare for that discussion.
Okay,
That's why I bring that up.
okay.
Also noted, thank you.
Any further discussion? Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion that we continue DPR 24-12 Washington Township Fire Department Station 145 to the September 23rd meeting.
I'll second.
Having heard a motion and a second, we now take a vote.
Ransberg,
Four.
Guggenberger,
4.
Reed,
4.
Zuzen,
4.
Kaufman,
4.
Okay, moving on to old business, which is Wind Farms PUD.
So actually, there's been a change to the agenda that Wind Farms PUDA 24-02 is now requesting a continuance, and the petitioner's representative is here to make that request.
Okay, go ahead and step forward and state your name and address, please.
Hello, my name is Mark Riffle. I'm an attorney at Staff, Stettinius and Hollister. My address is 2155 South Oakwood Drive, New Palestine, Indiana. I am here on behalf of the petitioner. My firm was retained as of Thursday to help represent the petitioner with respect to this PUD amendment. Upon our review of the application materials, we noted that there had been a considerable lack of communication with the adjoining property owners and neighborhoods. And so as part of our request for continuance, we would request that time so we can more appropriately meet with the adjoining neighborhoods, have communications with the adjoining property owners, and discuss their concerns with the proposed development, and potentially reach possible compromises in terms of the proposed development.
Is this the first time a continuance has been requested on this project?
This is the second one. They originally requested a continuance last month for the same reason, and I do know they had trouble finding legal counsel,
I remember that.
and they did just retain them a few days ago. The staff has no objection to the continuance.
And Mr. Taylor, can you remind us how many continuances petitioners are allowed?
I think one by right. After that, it's your discretion.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner on the motion to continue? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any discussion on the motion to continue?
I just want to point out that this is a 2-month continuance request to October 28th.
Okay. If there's no discussion, we'll take a motion.
I make a motion that we continue PUDA 24-02 Wind Farms and PUD amendment to the October 28th meeting.
Second.
Having heard a motion and a second, we'll now take a vote.
Ransberg,
Four.
Guggenberger,
4.
Reed,
4.
Zuzen,
4.
Kaufman,
4.
So we're now more than halfway through our agenda. Moving on to new business, DPR 2407.
Okay, sorry. This is Easton Gray Riverwalk. This is the first DPR that you're seeing in the overall Easton Gray Riverwalk section. We've seen plats in some of the other sections of Riverwalk, or Easton Gray, but nothing yet in Riverwalk. This is a request to approve the multifamily section as well as some of the commercial buildings that are going to be the main entryway into Easton Gray, which will be called Easton Gray Boulevard. The original plan unit development was approved in 2021, the final master plan in 22. And then last year for this area in 2023, a plat was approved for the infrastructure of the development, which is currently going in right now. This petition has been reduced from its original filing, and I'll get into that. The location is 0.3 miles west of the White Lake Creek. 17.4 acres is what was originally filed. It has been reduced from that. This is a map showing the zoning, which is PUD. The white outline is roughly where this will be. That's my rough drawing of on the map where the actual buildings are being located. So this is the Easton Gray development, and the ones in yellow are what specifically are being requested to be approved here. Again, the streets that are shown here were already approved and are being developed right now. And then this will be for commercial and multifamily buildings. This is their layout. So you have Easton Gray Boulevard coming in off of 36 here. 4 mixed-use buildings, so that is commercial on the first floor with multifamily on the upper 2 floors. And then the remainder of the buildings throughout here would all be multifamily buildings plus the clubhouse for the multifamily buildings. When I spoke about it being reduced from its original proposal, they had originally filed for all of Block A4B, and then for Block A5A over here, which they have since removed and will be presented to you at a later date with a different DPR proposal. This is just another layout of the overall buildings and the parking. There was substantial development standards laid out in the PUD for how these buildings needed to look and be developed, including minimum setbacks. So you see the buildings are all set up to the street to create a town center type environment with reduced setbacks for the multifamily buildings, 0 to 10 feet along the streets. This is the perspective of the Easton Gray Boulevard going in. So again, the first floor commercial, 2 floors of residential above. And then in the distance in this drawing will be the new town center. These are elevations. There were some fairly detailed restrictions on building elevations, and these are the proposals, which do in fact meet all the standards that were laid out in the PUD. This is all 4 facades for this one building type. And you can see the fronts look fairly, very good. And then the backs, we believe, look just as good as the front. So we're appreciative of this design and layout. This is an example of the 2-story buildings. So there will be several of these. They are townhome style with 2-car garages and 1-car garages. This is the clubhouse. This is the only 1-story building being proposed, although it is approaching 40 feet. It is 1 story. But that will be the clubhouse. I put a few drawings in here for landscaping because these drawings do differ from what you received in your packet. It's a little hard to see here, but some of the parking landscaping didn't meet the standards that were in the PUD. So they've added 2 trees here on the next. They've added 4 or 5 trees here and then 2 down here. And then 1 tree up in here. So that would eliminate condition number 2 that was provided in your staff report, that they submit a revised landscape plan, since they've already done that for you tonight. Again, this would be the first 21 buildings of the Easton Gray Riverwalk District, 4 mixed-use buildings, 12 2- and 3-story multifamily buildings, 4 single-family detached townhomes, so they're 3-story single-family homes, and plus the clubhouse I spoke of. The petitioner has met all standards of the PUD and the UDO, and then the landscape plan I showed to you earlier now complies with the standards, town standards, and the PUD. So we are recommending approval subject to the 3 conditions, which are standard, which does again remove original condition number 2 in your staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. I know it's a lot to take in.
I appreciate the fact that the petitioner addressed one of the conditions prior to coming to us. So that shows a good proactive approach to working with the town, which I like.
So Riverwalk Drive is actually the road that takes us into the development. And on your overall site plan, then where does the town hall and the event center and the,
So
To the
Easton
right.
Gray Drive is the one that comes in off of 36.
okay,
And then Riverwalk Drive is this east-west one. And then the town hall is right here.
okay. Got it, thank you.
You're welcome.
Was there a reason why the other section, I think you said A5 or block A5 was removed? Is it that they just want to do a smaller portion at a time, or were there other concerns?
I'm not sure. Maybe the petitioner would be better to respond to that question.
Any further questions for staff? If not, we'll ask the petitioner to come forward.
Good evening, Lance Farrell, 853 Banning Engineering, 853 Columbia Road, Plainfield, Indiana. I have my team here tonight. I have Representative Randy Sherman from Weaver Sherman, the architects. I have a representative from J.C. Hart, Chandler, and I have Sean from Republic. Linda has once again stolen my thunder with the pretty pictures and the details. Greg, to answer your question, this is, do you have my presentation? Is that it? We'll go through the first four at least. So this is standing, looking due north of the main entrance. In the far background would be your new government center. And on the left and right would be, okay, left and right would be what we would say is commercial on the bottom and stuff, residential type stuff on the top. And as you can tell, we're trying to make this a downtown walking community area where people can exercise, walk down, go to wherever they want to as far as a consumer. And then we have other people that would like to live there type of stuff. And I just kind of wanted to go over this because, when you guys got your packet, we have 80 some sheets on a set of these plans. But this is what you really, the picture tells 1,000 words. So this is kind of the same thing. It's just another step back towards 36 Rockville Road to tell you that there's two of these series of buildings that look like this to create that downtown boulevard. And again, it's just a left and a right type of a thing here with that. As she said, I was going to try to answer some of the questions that I've already heard. We worked with staff, we reduced one of the blocks for construction type purposes. And then the other block to the left, I would say we were probably not quite ready with the tenant that we had talked with that wanted to go in there. That we'll eventually get to. That's the one on the left, which would be your main entrance drive. Again, tonight, we're just here for these yellow blocks. The infrastructure is going in as we speak. These are basically blocks or pods that have the buildings, the parking lot, the landscaping, all the utilities. And as far as the landscaping goes, one of the things that we talked with Linda is we actually got so much landscaping that they actually kind of overgrow each other. So we asked her if we could do some different types of plantings where we have on the infrastructure, we'll have street trees and that kind of stuff. And where we have parking would come up to it. In 5 to 10 years, all those trees would kind of hit each other. So we kind of rearranged some of that and work with Linda to do that. So we really appreciate her working with us on that. I don't know if you guys were at the, I'll go back. at the ground breaking for the infrastructure, one of the things that John Hart of JC Hart said was really kind of impressive to me is that when they do a development, they don't boilerplate it and go on to the next town or the whatever. This right here that you're seeing through these photos are specific for Avon, the town of Avon. Now, they might take something in the inside or something like that, but what you're seeing with all this stuff right here is going to be Avon specifically only. And I can tell you that this group of team, we have met twice a month since before Christmas on the most delicate details of colors, shutters, stuff like that. So just myself, I'm proud of the way this is going to look, and I really am proud of what this is going to do for the town of Avon. So I don't have anything else. If I'd be willing to take any questions or whatever, but I was hoping I got through what you guys were after.
Questions for the petitioner?
I certainly fall in love with the renderings, so continue.
Yeah, this is very exciting to know that we're going to have a dedicated downtown. And I agree with Greg. I love the renderings and I love the look and I love that it's going to be pedestrian friendly and that you all have been very proactive with working with us. That's always we always get a little irritated when we hear that petitioners are not wanting to be cooperative, and you all appear to be extremely cooperative. So we appreciate that. Other questions for the petitioner?
It really is neat to see this come from basically a clean sheet of paper and and a vision. We hear about visions a lot of places, but it's really neat to see one come this far to fruition, this far in towards fruition. It's a tribute to you guys. Good work. And women, good work.
And there are no waiver requests involved with this either, correct?
That is correct.
Wow. Okay. There's no further, thank you. You can have a seat. Discussion? Nope. Anybody in the audience who would like to come forward and speak in favor of this? Anybody who'd like to come and speak against? Would you like to remonstrate for the people who did not speak for or against? Yeah, okay. Discussion.
You're happy with this, Linda?
Yes, sir.
I make a motion, we approve DPR 24-07 Eastern Gray Riverwalk Blocks A2, A3, A4-A, A4-B, A6-A, as amended. Let's see. A development plan review to approve multifamily house and commercial development, subject to the conditions proposed by staff within the August 26, 24 staff report. Since it has satisfied all the requirements for a development plan review under state law and subject to the approved findings of fact.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Having heard a motion and a second, we'll take a vote.
Ransberg,
For?
Guggenberger,
4.
Reed,
4.
Zuzen,
4.
Kaufman.
4.
And the motion carries. Moving on to the next item, which is basically, so we have a text amendment, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. ZA 24-08 proposes revisions to Chapter 7 of the Unified Development Ordinance. Is this thing off now? Or what? The UDO was approved in early 2022, or took effect April 1st, 2022, with some updates occurring through 2023. The town council unanimously passed resolution 2024-16 on August 22nd, initiating this text amendment. The revisions to Chapter 7 would take what are currently the enhanced architectural standards, and those would now be applied to all single-family dwellings as the base architectural standards. So there would no longer be a set of base architectural standards that would apply to all single-family dwellings that are being developed per the development standards of the district they are in, and there would no longer be a separate enhanced set of architectural standards that could be used to, by right, then use the enhanced lot standards that basically allow for greater density through narrower and smaller lots when a developer chooses to use those standards. The town council expressed concerns that the ordinance as it's currently configured is not providing the level of aesthetic design that they envisioned when the enhanced lot standards were adopted. While we believe that the enhanced architectural standards have improved aesthetic design, it hasn't been to the level that was envisioned by the council to merit the increases in density by right that are currently allowed in the ordinance. So again, these revisions, as initiated by the town council, would apply the enhanced architectural standards to all single-family dwellings and would remove the enhanced lot standards, which, if developers then wanted to be able to develop at a higher density, which the enhanced lot standards now require, they would need to rezone to a higher zoning classification. At which point, the commission and council would have an opportunity to perhaps see if petitioners provide voluntarily at that time a higher level of design that would merit an increase to a more intense zoning district. It is, just to give you a little bit of future timeline, it's staff's intention to revisit the architectural standards in the UDO probably in 2025. Just to be frank with you, we have the comprehensive plan update that we're working on now, as well as looking at other necessary revisions to the UDO. So we don't have an exact timeline of when we would address the architectural standards, but we do certainly have that on our plate as far as looking at whether we can just revise the standards or whether they need to be rewritten in their entirety. I think one of the concerns that the council has had relative to design is that the way the enhanced architectural standards are laid out right now is that there are 6 categories, and typically a developer has to pick 2 items from each category, and they're not set up in a way to provide a lot of variety, because a lot of times the developers choose to use the same 2 features over and over because it just works well for them. And that's not meant to be said as an indictment of the developers trying to give you a bad product. Some of it is that some of the standards in those categories don't necessarily apply. Like, just say, for example, to a rear facade, there might be 6 items in a category, and 3 of those might be things that you'd normally only find on the front of the house, but the way the standards are written, they need to pick 2 of those. So there's really only like 3 that they could use for a rear facade, and they may only use 2 of them because those only work well for them. So we may be looking at trying to rewrite those standards in a way that ensures more variety in the design, because we know that's a concern that has been expressed by council. So in summary, again, this would eliminate the enhanced lot standards, which allow developers to develop at a higher density by right without rezoning. And it would apply the full architectural standards that we have now to all single-family dwellings. So we are recommending that you forward this to the town council with a favorable recommendation. And before I finish, I just want to bring to your attention that we did receive an email less than an hour before the hearing from the Builders Association of Greater Indianapolis that they wanted to express that they had some concern about applying the enhanced standards to all new single-family dwellings. You have a copy of that in front of you, but we are recommending approval, or recommending that you forward this back to the council with a favorable recommendation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So Mike, I have a question about, is the expectation not being met because by being given a higher density in exchange for enhanced architectural standards, by definition, it's lowering what the expectation was? Is that kind of what we understand? Or is it just that the architectural standards themselves are lacking?
I think that the architectural standards are not stringent enough to provide the level of aesthetic quality that was expected in exchange for the increase in density by right.
Even the enhanced architectural
Correct.
standards? Okay, so this is a short-term fix for a larger problem.
You could certainly summarize it that way.
Because the larger problem is the architectural standards, which are going to need a lot more time and study to improve.
Yes.
Okay.
Previously with the option to do the enhanced standards, you were talking about them choosing certain options from certain categories. With this rewrite, is it saying you now have to do everything?
They would
Still a selection.
No, they would still need to choose options from the enhanced standards. Those would just become the base standards that would apply to all new single-family dwellings. So it would still operate as if you were using the enhanced standards to get the higher density, but without getting the higher density without rezoning.
So make sure I understand that going forward, if this is approved, there would be no enhanced standards that provides option for increased density.
Correct.
And density would be then managed through zoning only.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for staff?
Kind of going back to the whole stopgap thing, realizing ultimately, again, this is kind of just step one. How long would you necessarily feel that the stopgap could be put in place? I mean, let's say would this be good for several months? We're looking at a year? What kind of your thought on that?
Well, I mean, if adopted, this would be a permanent revision until further revisions might be proposed in the future. But realistically, we wouldn't expect to probably have any revisions to the architectural standards till sometime in 2025.
Thank you.
To further expound on his response, we're hoping to get some input from an architect, because Paul and I are not architects, so developing standards on our own is difficult. But we just know that some of the things that are not working, so we can try to play with them, but we want to get a little bit more professional input.
Makes sense.
So your first thought, of course, is just to be proactive now, get the process rolling, and then step up as time goes.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I think what we did here, when we did the UDO was a good step forward. And now as we look back what we thought may have been the right thing wasn't exactly what we had thought it was going to play out to be. So we're trying to make those changes as we go now, instead of waiting until the comp plan is all finished and done. That could take a year or 2 years down the road. We can address it as we go. And I think this is one way to do it. And then as we continue to do the comp plan, well, there'll be other changes along the way. I thank you for putting this together.
I think this is a really great example of, we spent a lot of time on that UDO and gave it lots and lots of sweat equity and as much thoughtfulness as we could when we created it. But implementation is always different. And sometimes you run into things where it's like, oh, this isn't what we thought it would be. And so going back and tweaking the UDO so that it works for Avon, I think it's always a good idea, as opposed to just, well, that's in the UDO, we're not going to do anything. So I appreciate the proactivity. I'm using that word a lot tonight, aren't I? So. Any further questions for staff? If no, there's no further discussion. We'll take a motion. I'm sorry. Thank you. This is why we have a vice president. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Anyone who'd like to speak for or against the change? Yes, sir.
Good evening, John Moore. My address 50 South Meridian Street, Suite 700, Indianapolis. I had a question about this, and it might be better for Mr. Taylor to answer this. Is when would this be effective, assuming it's adopted by the town council? Would it apply to a subdivision that's already been platted? Would it apply to just new subdivisions as they come in to be platted? If you come in the day after this is adopted to pull a permit, does it apply to that home?
I think that's a very good question.
Well, I don't know what the town council is going to do yet. They'll pick an effective date.
Okay.
And when they pick the effective date, I think section 1109 takes over. So I think it depends upon what approval you're seeking. But if you can fall under if you have a prior approval that falls under the section 1109 definition of permit, which doesn't really mean permit, then it says you get the old law. You don't have to comply with that new ordinance. So you used the example of a plat, and we know that in 1109, application for a plat is a permit and gives you those rights under 1109. It's pretty broad, but but for people who are coming in for a first time approval of some kind, again, I think they're the ones who would be subject to the new standards, but 1109 answers our problem.
Okay, great.
Really,
Thank
just
you.
one way or the other.
Thank you. That was my only question.
Good question. Anybody else who'd like to speak on this agenda item? Okay. If not, and if there's any further discussion on this with the board, then we'll take a motion.
I move that we forward a favorable recommendation to the town council for ZA 24-08, Chapter 7 text amendment to the UDO, the zoning text amendment to revise certain provisions in Chapter 7 of the UDO, since it has satisfied all the requirements for a zoning text amendment under state law.
Second.
Having heard a motion and a second, we'll take a vote.
Ransberg,
For?
Guggenberger,
4.
Reed,
4.
Zuzen,
Or
Kaufman.
Or
Motion carries. Do we have any other business that needs to be brought in front of the commission? Moving on to committee reports. There was no BZA meeting this month. Any other reports?
redevelopment most recently, in addition to invoice approvals, we also had updates regards 100 South, Dan Jones, amendment for Dan Jones widening for Phase 4. We discussed the pending police station remodel and also the introduction of the 2025 TIF budgets.
Okay. Any other reports to the commission? And is there anything else that needs to be brought forward for the good of the order? If not, this meeting is adjourned.